After a long day at work and dealing with terrible traffic, you finally get home. You feel stressed, tired, bored, and frustrated with everything that happened during the day. As you enter the kitchen, you see a big pile of dishes, something you asked your spouse to handle in the morning. However, they're just relaxing in front of the TV as if nothing is wrong. The anger builds up inside you, and unable to control yourself, you end up yelling at your spouse. You don't hold back, you want to make a point and show that what happened is a really big deal. Your spouse becomes scared and embarrassed. They're worried because you've never yelled at them like this before. They had planned to do the dishes later, but you didn't give them the chance. Their day has been long too, but you didn't consider that. They just wanted to have a nice night with you, but now that's ruined. Later that night, you start to realize the cost of losing your temper. You know you shouldn't have said what you said. You should have been more considerate and acted differently. You regret your choices. Maybe for you, it wasn't a pile of dishes that set you off. It could have been your kids using markers on the wall or your boss giving you a report right before your vacation. Regardless of the situation, we've all lost control at some point and felt the sting of regret. The Stoics define regret as the moment when past events take over our present lives. It's when we dwell on things beyond our control and resist our fate. Marcus Aurelius believed that we should be satisfied with what we have and accept the present, all of it. Regret is the opposite, when we're not satisfied with what we have and reject what we've been given. Seneca mentioned that we often suffer more in imagination than in reality. He meant that regret is just an emotion of our imagination. We tend to believe that if we had said something differently or acted in another way, the outcome would have been better. Marcus Aurelius shared a similar mindset and offered a solution to this problem. External things are not the problem. It is your assessment of them, which you can erase right now. Let's reconsider that fight you had with your spouse. Your regrets are not about the actual dishes or your spouse, it's about your perception of expectations. You expected your spouse to have the dishes done when you got home. So you believe it should have been different, and had it been different, you would be better off. Does that mean it's your spouse's fault? Maybe for leaving the dishes in the sink, but certainly not for your overreaction and definitely not for the regret you felt later that night. Regret is an internal problem, to be both diagnosed and treated by ourselves. We must learn to look past these self-focused emotions and master our feelings of regret. This post aims to help you understand your emotions, use the past to your advantage, and conquer your biggest regrets. Why do I feel regret? Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. Seneca. We've all told ourselves, no regrets. Countless memes, inspirational quotes, and videos remind us online. Poets, singers, painters, and writers have been creating art about it for millennia. We've practically been conditioned to live by it. But no matter how many times we read about it, sing along to a song about it, or tell ourselves not to, we all have something we regret. We all have that nagging feeling that comes back to us, hitting us exactly when we thought we forgot about that time, that place, those people. It comes back at the very worst time. It sucks. It hurts. The power of regret is not to be understated. Best-selling author and founder of the American Regret Project Daniel Pink found that 82% of Americans experience regret at least occasionally. Pink describes regret as an indispensable emotion, yet also claims it can be a positive instrument for improving your life. If we truly want to improve our life, we can't run away from these negative feelings. We can't hide them. But should we just accept this despair? Should we just come to terms with living with regret? This is what the great writer Samuel Johnson must have been wondering near the end of 1775. With 1776 on the horizon, Johnson wrote in his diary, When I reflect on the resolutions for improvement and change that I've made year after year, only to see them broken due to negligence, forgetfulness, vicious idleness, casual interruption, or morbid infirmity, and I find that much of my life has been unprofitably spent, with only a few days properly and vigorously employed, why do I still attempt to resolve again? I try because reformation is necessary, and despair is criminal. Samuel Johnson came to terms with his past, but not with his regret. He chose to reflect on his hardships to better himself, to avoid making the same mistakes in the future. He chose to fight regret, not to wallow in it. If there's one thing we can learn from Johnson, it must be that experiencing regret is inevitable, but our actions and mindset are not. Thus, the question is not, why do I feel regret, but rather, how do I deal with it? How do I move on? How can I make myself better because of this? To answer these questions, the Stoics practice strategies to build mental toughness and resilience, starting with examining what they controlled. Focus on what you control. Every event has two handles, one by which it can be carried, and one by which it can't. If your brother does you wrong, don't grab it by his wronging, because this is the handle incapable of lifting it. Instead, use the other, that he is your brother, that you were raised together, and then you will have hold of the handle that carries. Epictetus. One of the most important practices in Stoic philosophy, introduced by Epictetus, is determining what we control and what we don't. What we have power over and what we don't. What we can change and what we can't. There are two ways to look at the past, two handles to grab, as Epictetus said. The first handle forces us to perceive the past as an inevitable experience, destined to wrong and hurt us from the beginning. The opposite handle allows us to extract the good parts and use our experiences to benefit ourselves. In looking at past decisions, we must grab them by the latter handle. We must understand that what happened, happened. We can't change the past, no matter how much it hurt us or someone else. So what good does regret do? Absolutely nothing, as Holocaust survivor and author Dr. Edith Eger explained to Ryan Holiday on an episode of the Daily Stoic podcast. Ryan was discussing a relationship he regretted messing up, and Dr. Eger offered him one gift that would solve the guilt right then. "I give you a sentence," she said. "One sentence. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done things differently." "That's the end of that," she said. Guilt is in the past, and the one thing you cannot change is the past. As a society, we've become disillusioned by the idea of what we control. We all believe we have some control over the outcome of whatever we encounter. We all believe that if we keep thinking about what happened, somehow we'll be able to change what happened. Yet, we must come to terms with the fact that some things simply can't be changed. We must understand that some things are in our control and some that aren't. Say, if you regret getting a haircut, you're in control. You can style it, cover it, or just wait for it to grow out again, you command your situation. But if you regret cursing out your boss before quitting your job, you're not in control, you can't take back your words. As Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, and by extension, to us. Remind yourself that past and future have no power over you. Only the present, and even that can be minimized. Just mark off its limits. And if your mind tries to claim that it can't hold out against that, well, then, heap shame upon it. The past is done. We can't linger in our insecurities or ponder over our regrets. We must learn that what happened is out of our control now, we must let go. Letting go is a necessary, if sometimes heart-wrenching gateway to genuine transformation, as the always Zen basketball coach Phil Jackson put it. The Stoics called it the art of acquiescence, the giving up and the assenting of whatever things are so that they can be what they are to become. In one way, regret is just wishing things went the way we wanted them to. But by letting things become what they must, we are less likely to regret what we've done. In accepting that some things are simply out of our control, we are less likely to wish for a different outcome. The past is something we can't control anymore. We can't change what we said, what we did, or how we felt. We can, however, control the present. We control how we grow from our experiences. We control how we respond to adversity. We control how we can use our regret to our advantage. Love your fate. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Marcus Aurelius. After we sort out what we control, we must find how to respond, regardless if we control what's happening or not. We must determine how we handle ourselves, how we overcome obstacles, and how to move forward. In the first book of his Discourses, Epictetus envisions himself being executed by Roman guards, his life out of his control. In a display of tranquility and wisdom, he lays out his thoughts. I must die. But must I die bawling? I must be put in chains, but moaning and groaning too. I must be exiled, but is there anything to keep me from going with a smile, calm and self-composed? Though the term was first coined by German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the practice of amor fati, loving your fate, dates back to Epictetus and the Stoics. Often by means of reflection and meditation, the Stoics would use this practice to settle past trauma and help them achieve a greater sense of inner peace. The fates guide the person who accepts them, Cleanthes said, and hinder the person who resists them. Amor fati goes beyond simply understanding what happens to us. It's about recognizing that our perception doesn't always have to be negative. It's understanding that accepting present circumstances can make us better. It's realizing that we should be grateful for cloudy weather sometimes and that there's always a way through the storm. We all face hardships, get stuck in traffic, and deal with slow Wi-Fi or bad cell service when we need to send an important message. As rational people, we often think these hardships are specifically targeted at us, that the world is against us, and that we can't catch a break. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Everyone goes through obstacles, everyone gets tripped up sometimes. As discussed earlier, there are things in life we can't control, and these hardships will always be beyond our control. When we accept what happens to us, especially understanding that certain things, particularly bad things, are outside our control, we're left with this, loving whatever happens to us and facing it with unfailing cheerfulness and strength. Best-selling author Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, Mastery, sums it up well, stating that we need to accept the fact that all events occur for a reason and that it is within our capacity to see this reason as positive. Marcus Aurelius beautifully illustrates this concept in Meditations through the image of an artisan's shop. There are thorns on the path, then keep away. Enough said. Why ponder the existence of nuisance? Such thinking would make you a laughingstock to the true student of nature, just as a carpenter or cobbler would laugh if you pointed out the sawdust and chips on the floors of their shops. Yet while those shopkeepers have dustbins for disposal, nature has no need of them. Why get tripped up by the thorns? Why ponder over the sawdust on your floor? It's simply part of nature. As long as you have the capability to see them, you have the capability to move past them. In practicing amor fati, we're also less likely to have regrets in the future. By embracing the challenges that lie ahead, we're less likely to regret the decisions we make to conquer them, regardless of the outcome. We can tackle the future with confidence, conviction, courage, and more. Amor fati is more than just a mindset, it's a way of life. Incorporating amor fati into your life will take time, effort, and sacrifices that probably won't feel comfortable. But we must. We must move past this existential angst. We must move forward, away from our regret, and towards our future. Love what's happened to you. Love who you've become and how much you've changed. Love your fate, amor fati. Look ahead. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of action. Seneca. Before Ryan Holiday steps on stage for a big speech, he anticipates everything that could go wrong: trouble with the microphone, the clicker not advancing a slide, the audience not reacting as anticipated. By foreseeing potential problems, he can come up with solutions before anything actually happens, preventing himself from being overwhelmed if a problem arises. Rehearse them in your mind: exile, torture, war, shipwreck, Seneca said. All the terms of our human lot should be before our eyes. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, is one of the oldest and most common in Stoic philosophy. It literally means the premeditation of evils. Stoics use this practice to prepare for life's inevitable hardships, helping them remain calm and confident in turbulent times. The world isn't fair. We all know this. We don't always get what is ours, even if we've earned it. We don't always win, even if we play hard. But we can't be surprised when we don't win. If it comes as a constant surprise each and every time something unexpected occurs, you're not only going to be miserable whenever you attempt something big, but you're also going to have a much harder time accepting it and moving on to attempts 2, 3, and 4. You're going to have a much harder time living in the present instead of lingering in the past. You're going to have a much harder time trusting your instincts and fighting regret. There's perhaps no better personification of premeditatio malorum than the great Booker T. Washington. Washington ran a school with 1,500 students, all while advising politicians and activists and traveling across the country to give speeches. But how? How did he maintain this lifestyle, and with such striking success? When I begin my work in the morning, I expect to have a successful and pleasant day of it, but at the same time I prepare myself to hear that one of our school buildings is on fire, or has burned, or that some disagreeable accident has occurred, or that someone has abused me in a public address or a printed article, for something that I have done or omitted to do, or something that he had heard that I had said, probably something I had never thought of saying. He envisioned the worst possible things that could happen to him throughout his day. Not only did he envision them, but he expected them to happen. By doing this, Washington was more prepared for the hardships of the day. A cancelled train couldn't be as bad as his school burning down. Being late to dinner couldn't be as bad as someone verbally abusing him in public. In preparing himself for challenges, Washington was simultaneously preparing himself for regret. Since he saw his fears right in front of him and anticipated them happening, he was less scared of the outcomes of his choices, and he was less likely to regret them. In the same manner, Epictetus used this to help him foresee all the dangers that came with a seemingly easy decision: bathing. If you are going to bathe, represent to yourself the incidents usual in the bath: some persons pouring out, others pushing in, others scolding, others pilfering. For thus, if any impediment arises in bathing, you will be able to say, "It was not only to bathe that I desired, but to keep my will in harmony with nature, and I shall not keep it thus if I am out of humor at things that happen." Practicing premeditatio malorum allows us to be more prepared for life's inevitable setbacks. Though it may be hard to admit, everything will not go our way. We might not get that job that we want. We might not win that game. But we will be ready for any obstacles that cross our path. We'll know that we made the right decision, and we won't regret our choices.